Well, greetings, BUS20 students. This is Mr. Doucette, and this is our instructional video on Chapter 9, where I'll be going over some of the payroll problems that deal with the percentage method. And this is where you're going to be utilizing a couple of tax forms that are provided predominantly from the IRS, and they do change every year. So, depending on the edition of the book that you're using, the tables in your book may not match the problems that you're trying to solve. So keep that in mind. You always want to use the formula sheets, or excuse me, the tables that are found in the formula sheet, because those tables are going to be the ones that all of the problems in the course are based off of. Again, if you use a newer version of the textbook, it's possible that those tables are going to be incorrect for trying to solve some of the problems on the percentage method of payroll. And basically, what the percentage method of payroll is figuring out how much federal income tax that somebody's going to have to pay out of their paycheck based off of their marital status, based off of their how often they get paid, based off how many deductions they might have when they file their W-4 form, all those items. So we'll be looking at how to utilize the two tables. It's table or exhibit 9-1 and 9-2. And they're all basically percentage method tables. One of them is figuring out how many withholdings you have, and then you get to deduct the amount of withholdings you have from your gross pay, and then you get taxed on the remaining amount. And then from that, there's a second table that you'll refer to, and you'll fall into a different tax bracket based on how often you get paid, and then also whether or not you're married or single. So that's what we'll be looking at together. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'm going to go over here to Zoom, and I'm going to share my whiteboard. Let's see, here we go. And you should be seeing my screen now. And so these two problems right here are some payroll problems. And then we have 3 pages or 2 more pages of working out some payroll problems. But if you notice to the right, you do see the payroll exhibits. So you have exhibit number 9-1. This is your payroll period, so how you're paid, and then how many allowances that you've called for on your W-4 form when you filled out when you got employed. So if you had just 0 on there, then you're going to have no deductions. And if you have 1, then it's typically yourself. If you're married and have some kids, it might be 3, 4, 5, or 6, and you can actually claim more than that if you want. And they'll take more out of your check every week for taxes, and at the end of the year you might actually get a refund. So it's based off of these tables that we solve all of these problems that deal with the percentage method of payroll. So let me see, I'm going to stop sharing here just to make sure that we're both seeing the same thing. And I'm seeing me, but I'm not seeing the screen. So let me stop sharing and try again. So I just want to make sure that you're seeing my screen. Right. All right, here we go. Now it appears to be working. All right. Sorry if you weren't seeing it before. So on the left is the couple of problems we'll start with, and on the right are those tables. So again, exhibit 9-1 is at the top, and that's how many withholdings you have based off this amount of money that you don't get taxed on based on how many withholdings you have and whether or not you have been paid weekly, monthly, etc. So, and then the second table deals with, again, whether you're married or single, and then again how you are paid, whether it's monthly, weekly, etc. So looking at the first problem here, it says on Chapter 9, how much combined tax should be withheld from a paycheck of a married employee earning $1,075 per week and claiming 4 withholding allowances. So the first things you want to note here is that they're married, right? And that they have 4 withholdings, right? So the first thing we're going to do then, based off of these tables, this problem, again, the tables are relevant to the problems I'm asking you to solve. So these are the tables that you will also find in the formula sheet for this week. But we're going to go ahead and figure this out together. So first thing we're going to do is figure out, well, how much is not taxable? And in this case, they have 4 withholdings, and they're married, and they're paid weekly. Sorry, that was the other factor you wanted to look up, is weekly. So let's select that. All right. So we're going to go weekly here per week. All right. So if I come to this chart, weekly is the first line, and that means for every withholding, I get to deduct $75 that I will not have to pay taxes on. And since there's four withholdings, I can do 4 times 75, which equals 300. So $300 of my 1,075 is not taxable. That's what we mean by withholdings, is we don't have to pay tax on that portion. So if I take my $1,075 and I minus the 300 from that, that's going to be 25, 6, $125 left. Or sorry, $725 left. So now that's my taxable income. All right, that's the first step. So you could say step one is to figure out why it keeps doing that. My apologies. First step is to figure out how much you don't have to pay taxes on. And then the second part is to figure out, okay, what is my taxable income now that I have done that? So we're saying he's married and he's paid weekly. So that's the first table here, weekly. And then he's either single or he's married. So in this case, this person is married. And so here's their tax windows. So you basically look down here. I'm sorry it's so unclear. It looks a little blurry, but basically it says here from $363, I'm going to blow it up, $163 to $512. If the amount of taxable income falls within that bracket, you pay zero tax, but you do pay 10% on everything over $163. In our case, though, we're at $725, so that would take us to the married column again weekly, and we would fall into this second column, $512 to $1,582. So that's our taxable income. Ours is $725, so that means that we're going to fall within that bracket. So that means our taxes are $34.90 plus 15% of everything above $512. Let's move over here and see if I can keep it all on the same screen. So we said it's $34.90. That's our flat tax, right? And then it's going to be 15% of everything above $512. Right? Well, I said mine's $725. Sorry. Minus 512 because that's the cap. Double check my amounts just to make sure. Yeah. All right. So 725 minus 512 is 3, 1, 2, $213. And I'm going to multiply that by 0.15. That's the percentage. I don't have my calculator in front of me, but I have to pay 15% on $213. So let me do that real quick. Let's see. 15% times, let's do, sorry, $213 times 0.15 equals $31.95. Write that right here, $31.95. And again, I said it was $34.90 flat rate. And now another $31 and doesn't seem right. Let me try it again. $213 times 0.15 equals, yep, $31.95. So there's my taxes. I add those two together. So 5, 8, 6. So $66.85 is now my taxes. So that's how much tax I will pay, federal income tax I will pay, based off of those situations. Now, this scenario above. Now, if I want to find out how much is my paycheck going to be, then I would take my 1,000, what was it, $78, $75? That was my paycheck amount. I'm going to minus the 66.85. Zero there, sorry. So that would be 15. And that would be 0. 6 minus 6, and then 7 minus, or 6 minus 6 is 0. So basically, it would be $1,015. All right. Missing something here. 5 minus 8 would be, I'm sorry, 15 minus 8 would be 3. There you go. So it'd be 1,000. My paycheck would end up being $1,003.15. And so that would be the amount of my paycheck. I deducted the 66.85 from the 107, 1,075. And so that's what my paycheck would be. It's not asking you for that. It's just asking you what would be the tax. So again, let's do the next problem, and maybe it'll make a little more sense if that was confusing. How much combined tax will be held from a paycheck of a single employee, single now, paid monthly, claiming zero withholdings, right? So since there's zero withholdings, I don't need to even worry about this top chart because it only starts with a single withholding. So I just go to the second chart, and we said my paycheck was 31.85, and I'm paid monthly. So that happens to be table 4 right here, single, married, paid monthly. And it looks like I'm going to fall between this $944 and $3,263 since my paycheck was 31.85. So I will fall in that category. That means my taxes, according to this chart, are $75.60 plus everything above $944 is subject to a 0.15% tax. All right. So again, if my paycheck was, let's do this, 31.85, and everything, so I can minus the 944 because I have to pay taxes on everything above that. So that's 1, that's 4, that's 22. So I have to pay taxes on 2241 times 15. If I use my calculator here, 2241 times 0.15 equals $336.15. 336.15. And then I get to add to that the other fixed amount of tax, 75.60. And I add all those up. It's 5, 7, 11, 11. It's $411.75 of taxes. That's what I'm going to have to pay. Now, again, if I want to figure out how much is my paycheck going to be, I take my 3,185 and I would subtract the $411.75. So let me do that. $3,185 check minus my taxes of $411.75 equals a paycheck of $2,773.25. So that's what my paycheck would be after they withheld the federal income tax. All right, so that's the percentage method. I'm going to go over a few more problems on the next sheet. So give me a second to do that. And back to the Zoom session. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. All right, now we're looking at the next problem. And by the way, this is just a worksheet that I use when I go over this in the classroom. So I'm just actually using this more as a teaching rather than actually going over any of the problems on your quiz or exam. But a lot of these problems could end up on your exam or on your quiz. So keep that in mind. Just because I'm going over them means they could or could not be on the exam or on the quiz. So anyway, looking at the next problem, problem number 3, Jeremy Dunn is single. He has 2 withholdings and earns $4,025 a month. So again, we want to note he's single, 2 withholdings, and earns monthly. That's the key. So they want to calculate the amount of his paycheck his employer withholds, Social Security, Medicare, and federal income tax. So by the way, Social Security is 0.0125, I think, or that's Medicare, and then 0.62 is Medicare, Social Security, Social Security, and then Medicare. So these are 2 additional taxes that you'll have to be paying on. And so we're going to first figure out his federal income tax, federal FIDT, and then or FIT, and then we're going to figure out his Medicare and his Social Security. And so they're asking you, what is his paycheck going to be after all that's deducted? So this is kind of putting it all together. So we'll start by looking at his federal income tax. So again, he has two withholdings, and he gets paid monthly. So if I come over here to monthly, it's $329.20 per deduction. So 329.20. And again, this is just money that he doesn't have to be taxed on. So if I times that by two, I'm going to do my best to do this right without looking. 8. So that's 4. But I better not do it that way. Let me just multiply it. 329.20 times 2 equals 648. I was on the right track. 658.40, right? So that's how much he gets to take out of his paycheck that will not be taxable. All that's saying is I don't have to pay taxes on $658.40. So let's do the math on that. 0.025 equals, so that means I will pay taxes, however, on $3,366.60. So now I need to figure out, okay, where does that fall in the tax brackets down here? Again, he's single and he's got monthly pay. So that's going to bring me down to this one here. So monthly single, and he falls 336. He falls within the third category right here, $3,263 and $7,633. So he falls into that category. So his tax is $423.45. That's what it looks like. So let me write that down then. So his tax is going to be a flat rate of $423.45. And then he's going to pay 15%. Looks like, no, actually 25% on everything above $3,263. Right? So since he made 3,300, he has to deduct this from it, right? In order to figure out how much is actually I'm going to be subject to the 25% tax. So 6301. So $103.60 is subject to a 25% tax. That's not too bad. 103.60 times 0.25 equals $25.90. So we'll put that here plus 20. That means the additional amount of tax he's going to pay. So what is his total FIT, federal income tax? Is going to be 423.45 plus 25.90. 449.35. So that's his federal income tax. Now we need to figure out how much is he going to pay in Medicare and Social Security. So all you need to do here in order to figure that out is to take your total amount. Nothing changes. You don't use the taxable income. You use the whole amount, and you multiply it by 0.0125. That's going to give you your Medicare, and then 4,025 times 0.062, which is 6.2%. I got that right. Yeah. All right. So then I'm going to multiply those. So $4,025 times 0.0125. That equals $50.31. So we'll add that over here. $50.31. That's going to be his Medicare. And then 4,025 times 0.062 equals 249.55. So 249.55. 55. That's his Social Security. So we can add all of those up. 229.55 plus $50.31 plus $449.35 equals total tax out of his paycheck. It keeps doing that. Of $729, 729.21. And if I deduct that, that's going to be his total tax. So if I deduct that from the 4,025, 729.21, it's going to be a paycheck of $3,295.79. So that's what his paycheck would be after deducting federal income tax, deducting Social Security, and deducting Medicare. So that's all you do in the percentage method and solving these kinds of problems. Here you have a few different scenarios where you're just basically trying to find out what their withholdings are going to be for each one of these. So I'm not going to work all of them, but I'll work. How about if I work the third one down, Reese? He's married or she's married with four dependents and a weekly paycheck of $1,172. So I'll put that here. And so if she's married and has four dependents and paid weekly, I can start at the top table again. So weekly would be $75, actually $76 per person. I can't see what it says. So quality so bad. $76 per person. She has four. So let's do that. So four dependents times $76. That's going to be how much is subject to no tax. So let's see, 76 times 4 equals $304. So $304 of her paycheck is not subject to any taxes, so we can take that out. Again, this is 12 minus 4 is 8, 6, 11 minus 3 is 8. So $868 is subject to tax. But again, Mr. or Mrs. Reese, is paid weekly, and they're married. So we can come down here to weekly, table 1, married, weekly. And I can't read it now. Let me blow it up some more. Help a little bit. All right, they have 800. She said her paid taxable income is 868. So that falls here into the second column. So that's 3490 plus 15% of everything above 512. So let's write. So taxes are going to be 3490 plus everything above 512 is going to be subject to a 15% tax. So if we take the $68, that's her taxable income, but she doesn't have to pay taxes on the 512 because she already paid it here. So that would be $356 is subject to the 15% tax. So 356 times 0.15 equals $53.40. That's her tax plus 3490 is her tax. So that would be that would be 8. That would be 9. $98 is her tax. And that would come off of the 1,172. So it's not asking, it's just asking how much is her withholdings. But if I wanted to figure out what her paycheck would be, not including Medicare and Social Security, I would minus $98 from that. That comes out to, I don't want to do the math. Let's see, $1,172 minus 98 equals $1,074. That would be the paycheck amount. But all it was asking for was this amount in this table. All right, I think that's it for the percentage method. Just make sure you first figure out how much you don't have to pay taxes on and deduct that from your paycheck, and then go back and figure out how much taxes you're going to pay on the remaining amount. That would be your taxable income. And then figure out what that amount is, and then, of course, deduct that from your paycheck amounts total. If you do have Social Security and do have Medicare as well, make sure that you take it from the total amount of your paycheck multiplied by each of those percentages, and that's going to give you your amount to pay for each of those. All right, that's it. Pretty much done with this video. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to me during my office hours or any other time, and we can set up a time to discuss these problems a little bit more in detail. Have a great week.